Perfect. Well, then we'll go ahead and get started. I just want to say thank you for attending today's EnRoute webinar. My name is Stuart with SAI, and today's webinar will be presented by Aaron Clapp. He is an EnRoute expert. He is in charge of all the training here at SAI, knows everything there's to know about EnRoute. So he'll be talking today about how to output a job larger than your table, which may be something you're familiar with, maybe new. But Aaron has lots of additional tips and tricks on how to make that process go as smoothly as possible. And after the webinar, we'll open it up for some questions that you can just type in the chat window there if you have any, either about outputting a larger job, or if you have any other questions about EnRoute, you feel free to go ahead and ask those, and we'll answer as many as we can. And as normal, we will be recording today's webinar, and we will post it to our YouTube channel once it is over. So you will have the opportunity to review it or share it with others. We'll send everyone a link to the recording. And I think that'll be everything for now. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to Aaron.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so let's get started. So outputting a job bigger than table. So this traditionally in the past has always been kind of a little more of a difficult thing to do, just simply because there was a lot of moving parts that you kind of had to worry about. And I kind of want to go over the two methods so you guys are familiar with kind of both ways to do it, just in case you ever need to do this in either way. So the first thing that we're going to do is let's take a look at a design and see how we would do this normally without the special tools. And then for those of you who may not have the latest version of EnRoute, then we'll also take a look at the second option, which has the newer EnRoute 6 tool that's available for you guys. So let's start out by putting up some text here. And then we're just going to make this larger here so that it extends beyond our plate. It's going to look a little weird, but we'll just make it bigger like this. Stretch it out a little bit. Okay, so if we have a job like this, where let's say we needed to complete it all in one piece and it was connected and it had to be continuous, and you had a piece of material that is bigger than your 4x8 sheet. So in this case, what I've done is I've set up my sheet to be a 4x8 size, and then I've set out everything at 0, no margins or no origins or anything like that. We would then toolpath this, and one of the things that you would need to do is essentially we would just take this object and scoot it over exactly the amount that you needed to cut out. So let's, I'm going to actually also place let's take the snaps off here. I'm going to put a boundary around this. So let's say we are cutting this out. We're just going to put an routing offset on here. Say we're using a 1/2 inch end mill, go all the way through the material. So we'll just set up a toolpath here that kind of represents what we want it to do. So the best thing for us to do then would be to place this in such a way that would give us the best way to, in order to maximize or make it easier for us to move the plate later on down the road. So what we would do is we would use our, I'm going to use my shortcuts to snap this into position. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever used this before, but actually I'm going to, just to kind of explain what I'm doing here. I have an object like this, and I can snap it to any one of my cardinal locations here using my number pad. So this is using control, and I have to use my D-pad. You have to use a D-pad. So if you have a keyboard with a number pad on the right-hand side, and you hit Command 1 or Control 1, Control 7, 9, 3. This won't work with the numbers up on the top, unfortunately. So anyway, just wanted to, that's one of those features that a lot of people don't know about. So you can use those to kind of snap things right to where you want them to be. So that's what I'm going to use here. I'm going to put this right in the middle of my sheet to the left-hand side. So I'm going to hit Control 4, and that's going to put it kind of right up against the edge here. So what I would do is I would then go to my setup menu, and I would go to Preferences, and I would choose the option right here that says Clip Toolpath to Plate. What this does is it actually chops off the toolpath right at the plate. So when it gets to this spot right here, it's going to cut these toolpaths off right here, and right down here. So it's not going to output anything to the right of that box. Now let's go ahead and output just for fun here. I'm going to hit to File. We're just going to go to the desktop and we'll call it Test. Okay, we're just going to add the tool because I hadn't added it to my setup. And now I'm going to use a tool to check out my preview. Now, if you go to your Solutions menu and go to Backplot, and it always opens up on my other screen, so I'll pull it over here. But it's going to open up this program right here. This can open up fairly simple CNC files, things like that. So if you have a CNC machine that uses your pretty standard G code, for the most part, this should be able to open it. I don't think it works with the BSC machines or anything like that yet, but so I can go File, Open, and now I can go to my desktop and navigate to that file on the desktop. So Test, CNC, and I can open. And so now what you can see is it has created my toolpaths, and then right here, let's make this a little bigger here, it's cut off my toolpaths right where I intended it to. So then I know I can preview this and say, okay, well, this is how this is going to output. Then what you would need to do is to output the second half. Now, depending on how you want to do this, if you want to allow yourself a little bit of what they call overlap, depending on what you're cutting and things like that, you can move it over exactly the width of your plate. So what we would do is we would move this over exactly 96 inches. So I would just grab this. I'm going to hit my Precision Input Center, and I would go to Move, and the location I'm just going to add, and I should be able to, yeah, so 96.5. Add that there. Whoops, sorry, I meant to do negative on that. Undo. Hold on here. 192? No. All right. Let's try this again. There we go. I would move it over exactly that amount. And then I can re-output this again. So now if I go to the output section, to File, I'm going to call this Test 2, hit Save, Open, we're going to call it test2.cnc, and now we've got the other half of our logo. So this could be done this way, and this is if you have EnRoute 5 or EnRoute 4 or one of the older versions of EnRoute that doesn't have the new tool. This is going to be the best way to accomplish that, is to move your piece over. Now, the thing that's going to be really important is to make sure that you move your tape or your piece of material kind of along with that. Now, depending on your table and whatnot, you may or may not be able to move it this much or whatnot. But the idea is that you could, if you have the ability to do this with your machine, and it's configured this way, you could output it this way and create something that's larger than your table. Now, the only thing here is going to be accuracy in terms of when you actually move the sheet on your table. So this is where you might want to consider putting in some kind of guides or something that will allow you or help you place the material exactly in the place that it needs to be. So like setting up some dowel holes or something like that might help you, or some registration holes for you to allow you to get the job into the correct position to make sure you're not pushing too far to the left or to the right. You're making sure you're getting it real accurate. So that becomes then a more of a tricky thing on the user end to try and figure that out. The other way is the new tool in EnRoute 6. We've created a new tool that allows you to do panels of a particular job. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this back in to our original configuration here. Olin, yes, I think you're right. I should be using 95.5. You're right. Yep. That should actually be 95.5. You're right. So good eye there. The tricky part with that whole setup is moving the piece, things like that. What I would prefer to do is to separate it into panels if I can. Then I don't have to worry about moving it. And that's what this new tool is going to allow us to do. So I'm going to actually create a double panel job by clicking on my button right here. It says define plate panels for oversized setups here. We can also get there by going to the machining plate and then hit define plate panels. When I click on this, I'm going to get this particular setup right here. It's confined to your plate. So in this case, I would actually have to make my plate bigger in order to accommodate this. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. So I'm going to hit escape to get out of it real quick. I'm going to select this and see the scale. So it looks like we're at 152 inches. So I'm going to go into my plate, and we're going to set this to 160 just so that we have enough length. All right, so now that we have the entire job inside of our plate here, now I can start setting up some plate panels. So I'm going to again go into machining, define plate panels, and now this is where I can start creating panels. So let's say I have enough width, I just don't have enough length. I can grab a panel, drag it from the outside, and I can split this job anywhere I want to, either manually, or if I hit F2 while I'm in this configuration, so F2 on your keyboard, which, there we go, that is going to pull up a position bar. So now I can put this exactly where I want this to be. So if I want it to be at 96 inches, I can do that, and it'll put that panel right at 96 inches, and I hit OK, and now I'm going to have a green and a white panel. So now what we can do is we can output this, but we have a few more things that we need to do first. So at any time, let's just use this button from now on. So if I click on this button, I can toggle between different panels, and when I hit enter on my keyboard, that's the one that becomes highlighted, and that's the one that's going to output. So I can at any point just click on one of these and hit enter, and then that's going to be my selection. So we've got it set up. We've got our panels the way we want them. There's one last step that we have to change right before we output when using this new tool. And we have to actually go into the driver settings. So if we go into the setup menu and we go to machine setup, we have every driver is going to have this section right here. So you're going to see it like this, and then you're going to come into the driver parameters section, and you will see your home type position settings. Now, these are typically always at 0, and they should be at 0. And then you want your home corner to be in the lower left. So these will remain unchanged. The one that you're going to want to change is the user defined. When we set it to user defined, it automatically defaults to the bottom left-hand corner of the plate that you've created. So wherever that plate is located and whatever you defined your plate to be, if you define it as 10 by 10 or 20 by 20 or 96 by 48 or 48 by 96, it's always going to put it in that user-defined box down here. So I'm going to actually change this to the plate. If I click plate, what this does is it allows the 00 to change based on what plate I have selected, which was specifically added for this. So now if I click on my define plate panels and I click on this one and hit enter, now this becomes my new 00. And so I can put this as my starting point. So whether I'm shifting the material over or if I'm using a multiple piece setup where I'm cutting, say my pieces are only 48 by 96, 4 by 8 sheet, then I can just, cut this in several multiple sheets and still be okay. So the nice thing here is that I can use this to shift it over on the plate, or I can use different plates of material to do that. And this will become my new 00. So let's go ahead and output this, and let's go back to the beginning. So let's click here. I'm going to select my first panel. I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard. Now that I have my set to plate, also be aware that when you use this setting, we also have to have the clip to plate option turned on. The good thing though is if you don't have this clip to plate option turned on and you try and click on this button, it'll actually prompt you and say, hey, do you want to turn that option on? You have to have it on in order to use it. So it'll actually flip it on for you. So that's the good thing. So if you do forget that particular option, when you hit the panels, it'll actually flip it on for you automatically. So that's kind of nice. So we're going to output. Again, this time we're going to go back to, we'll do test 3. And then we'll look at that. All right, and so it's done the same thing. Now, the important thing to note here, and this is where it's going to be different from the last, is that our bottom left-hand corner origin is down here. That's where our origin is, so that's good. We want that to be that way. So we can see it's basically created the same thing. And now I'm going to come back in here, click on my panels, click on here, hit enter. We're going to output to test 4. Enter. Let that process, and we will open this up. And I'm actually going to open another instance of backplot so we can kind of see them both side by side. Let's make this one just a little bit smaller. In fact, actually, let's just go to top view so we don't have the 4 views getting in our way. And then let's do top view, open, test 4. And then we've got our second output right here. And the good thing is here is that it's also reset the origin down here. So if you look at our XY coordinates, as we step through this, your XY coordinates are starting at the beginning. I'm going to go to my view menu and I'm going to go into step mode. That means that it's going to go step by step. And if I hit my down arrow key, it's going to start showing me a preview of what this looks like. So we're actually starting at 0 close to our home position, which is good. This is where we want this to be. So we're starting at the beginning of our home of the bed. And so if we have our, again, what I would recommend doing in these, well, I guess it's not as crucial, but I would still recommend have some way on your machine to be able to shove a piece of material or whatever your plate is, be able to put it in the same exact location as you did before. So having some kind of like I know some machines have like a rail system or a bumper system, or you have pop-up pins where you can push up material against it and it'll put it right where it needs to be. If you don't have that, I know some multi-cams, I don't think they do. There's other machines out there that probably don't. You can simply screw something to the side of your, or glue something down to the side of your bed so that every time you place a 4x8 sheet on there, it always puts it in the same 0, 0. Because when it comes to paneling jobs like this, it's going to be important to kind of make sure that you get the correct settings and whatnot, top to bottom, and so you're not skewing the material quite on each piece. So we can even do this not only lengthwise, but we can also do this tall-wise as well. So if we go 160 on the height, I can start paneling jobs. If I stretch this out, this is going to look really weird, but let's center it in here. I can start clicking on my panels now, and I can start doing multiple panels. So I can do panels from the left, panels from the right, and then I can keep doing these. I can keep dragging as many panels as I want and create this as many panels as I need. So if this is going to be a huge job and you want to panel it over a huge amount of space, this is the easiest way, because every time you click, hit enter, this becomes your new 0, 0. So that piece can now be shifted right into that 0, 0 of your machine. And you don't have to worry about placing it in a certain place, or you just get it right in the 0, 0 or the very bottom, bottom origin point of your machine, and you're set. And that's basically setting up a panel job. It makes it a lot easier than what it ever used to be. This process becomes a lot more simpler. And let's just take a look at another one of these panels here. Let's go here. I'll put this. Test 5. Pull up one of our back plots here. There we go. And now we've just got this section. So really helpful, really useful. Just remember that when you're done going through and finishing your panels, what I would recommend that you do is just make sure and go back and turn off the clip to plates. Just because if they're the clip to plate option, if you're cutting, let's say that you're cutting some panels or something like that, the clip to plate option, it's important to kind of put it back to where it was, because let's just go down here. If we were to move this like this, let's say that we're going back to cutting just nesting cabinet parts or something, and you wanted the tool path to go outside the plate like this so you could maximize your material yield, it will actually cut your tool path off. So just be aware of that. If you do panels and you turn on that clip to plate option, and then you go back to doing normal cutting, and you typically have your tool path go off the edge of the plate a little bit, just be aware that the clip to plate will cut that off and will cause you some problems there. Just make sure and turn that off. And then the second thing you'll need to do is go back into the machine setup, and then I would just recommend putting it back to user defined so that it outputs normally with the same XY coordinates as it did before. So just those two little steps. Make sure you set it back to user defined and then turn the clip to plates off. Although, you know, some people just get used to using the clip to plate. It's not a thing you always have to turn off. If you do a lot of designing with multiple copies of your artwork, you know, out here, and they're already toolpath, a clip to plate actually works pretty nice, because then you can just, whatever's in your tool, whatever's in your plate will be output. You don't have to worry about, you know, if the stuff outside of your plate is going to get output or not. So in this case, let's say, let's go back into our preferences here. If I turn clip to plate off and I select this option and I hit output, if I don't choose the option for selected only, it will actually output everything. And so we don't want that. So it also can be used in that way. So several different ways it could be used, but just know that that's one thing that you might run into. So that is using clip to plate and outputting multiple panels. There are several other features inside of EnRoute that you could do to create panels like this. I know in the past a lot of people have used the some of the other tools, like the cut by line tools, in order to cut their design in half. That would also work as well if you prefer to do it that way. That is another method of doing it. I just prefer to use this method because a lot of the work is kind of taken care of for me, and I don't really have to worry about, you know, where my toolpaths are going to line up and whatnot, and all that. So this is going to be a little more accurate for you. But you can do that as well. So if we were to take this, it looks like my design got a little bit wonky here. So I'll pull these back. So let's just take this design. You could always delete the toolpath and then come in here with your cut by line. Oops. Now, why am I having a hard time finding this all of a sudden? There. Oh, wait. No, that's not it. Well, where is my... Am I thinking of Flexi? Hopefully not. Oh, here it is. Okay. All right, there we go. I'm not sure why I forgot about that. Anyway, okay, so cut by line. It's under the weld tools. So I can then drag my tool across like this, and then I could split it apart like that, and it'll give me a cut shape. So if I select this, 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 and this, now my design is cut in half, and I could theoretically do it like that, and that would be another method of doing the exact same thing. So this would work as well if you wanted to cut your design in half and panel it that way. That would be another method of doing it. So there's several different methods, but I just wanted to make sure you guys knew about this method, which makes things a little bit easier in case you're doing something that's bigger. So do we have any questions? Oh, here you go. Look at that. So the preference for clip to tool place needs to be turned on in order for your plates to output correctly. Make this change. Yes. So there, you get to see that. You get to see that little message. So that's what's going to pop up if you don't have it on. Will this work with texture? Yes, 3D textures it will. So if you want to do this with a 3D texture, it will do that as well. That's actually a good question. We can You can set up a 3D object and do that as well. Oops. You could do that as well. So yes, any kind of, because what it's doing is it's not actually cutting the let's delete those panels. It's not actually cutting the geometry in half. It's just taking the tool paths and cutting those in half. And so that's the kind of nice thing, is it's not actually cutting your geometry. So yes, you can do this with 3D. You can do this with anything 2D. You can also do this with rapid texture, but I would recommend just using the paneling options inside of the rapid texture for this particular option. And the reason why is because you can set an overlap value on here. So this kind of makes it nice in case you want to set an overlap. You can't set too much of an overlap on the on the panel section. So just be aware of that. It's going to be more of a true to true type cut, whereas the panels in this case, you can do it right in here. Now, if you are doing rapid texture, though, there's also some nice things about doing it in rapid texture that allows you to make sure that it's symmetric. So if you're doing a repeating pattern, you can make sure that it's symmetric so that you can panel the pieces together so that you don't have to say, oh, well, I have to put this panel here, this panel here, this panel here. I've got 4 panels and I can put them in any order and they'll still be okay. So that's, or at least, as long as they're, in the section. So if I go rows, let's see, let's do, what do I have? What are my panel? Oh, they're huge. Let's just do 15 by 15. So it's a little bit easier to see. If I do panels like this, then I can split up my panels into several sections like this, or make them bigger, make them smaller, and then I can provide an overlap gap for the edge of my material or whatever. So you could do it both ways. I would probably just use the panels inside of the rapid texture. That's why I wouldn't do it there. But unless the case where this might not apply is if you're making a sign, say, let's take this again, for example. If we were going to create a graphic like this, let's just redo this here. If we were doing like a rapid texture in between, and I need to convert these to lines and arcs. So if I group this together, and then I go into my rapid texture, and let's do chip texture, apply it. Now, if I'm doing something like this, where it's tied to something else, so the rapid texture is tied into the design of the sign, then yes, I would want to use the paneling option here, because this is going to allow me to panel this particular job where, because it has a design inside of it. So this is where that would also be included. So yeah, that's actually a good question. So you could do it either way in that case. Let's see. Bobby
So
asked, was the backplot not available for BSE machines? Currently, at the moment, no. It is not available for them. Their code is not supported by the software just yet. Although we are working on trying to get that better supported for it. So that's something we are working on, but it's not in there yet because this program has always been kind of a more of a G code. It reads the G code. So because BSE and some other manufacturers like Felder, SEM, they have non-standard G code. The software can't read it quite yet. So we are working on those though to kind of make sure it's a little bit better.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Excellent. Well, thank you all for attending. I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. So once again, we will be posting this recording onto our YouTube channel, and we will send everyone an email with the link to that so that you can all review it anytime you like. And we will be having the next EnRoute webinar next month. And so let's see here. That will be on, looks like May 26th. We'll be discussing how to effectively use ATP Lite in EnRoute Plus. And I think that'll be everything for today. Thank you so much, Aaron, and we'll talk to you folks next month.